Cooking with Susie. Today we're making Susie's Simple Crockpot Chili. This is something I make a lot, and I love it because it's very easy to make and it tastes delicious, and you can make, you can vary it however you'd like to your personal taste. So I've already started, and what I've got going here is about 2 pounds of ground turkey, and a chopped green pepper and a chopped onion. And I'm just browning that first. Now, I used to always make this with chopped beef, which of course is delicious, but the last time I made it with the ground turkey, and it came out really, really good. So decided to try that again. So basically, as I said, just starting off by browning the onion, pepper, and the meat. I like to use this tool, very handy tool that you can purchase from your Pampered Chef consultant, because it does a great job of chopping up the meat in the pan. The texture of the ground turkey is a little bit different. It's kind of a mushier texture starting out than the beef, but it's not going to get as visibly brown, but you just want to make sure it's almost cooked through and that those vegetables are nice and tender. This will be cooking in the crock pot for about 5 hours, so it's not critical if the meat is not cooked all the way through, because it'll definitely cook in the crock pot. But this is how we want to start out. And you can add seasonings to the meat. We're going to add some seasonings to the chili, but you can add seasonings right in the pan while you're browning the meat. You could add garlic if you want. I personally don't think I would like the taste of garlic mixed in with the onions and peppers and seasonings in this, because I think it might be a little overpowering, but that's completely up to you. Okay, so I think that's good. So now comes the fun part, where we basically just get to dump everything in the crock pot. Now, if you use a less lean cut of chopped meat, like 80 or 85%, you probably are going to want to drain this first before you throw it in the crock pot. But sorry. But I find that the turkey really doesn't need to be drained. There's a little bit of liquid in there, but it's not much, and it'll just add to the flavor. So first, we're going to throw that in the crock pot. Next, we're going to add about 2 large cans of diced tomatoes, which were mostly drained. There's a little bit of liquid left. If you're not sure about how liquidy versus thick that you want your chili, I suggest when you drain your cans of tomatoes that you reserve the liquid. I tend to like my chili a little bit thicker, so even though I usually start off by reserving the liquid, I have never ever added it back in, so I didn't even bother today. So we're gonna, if you don't have diced tomatoes but you have whole tomatoes, that's fine too. You can either dice them yourself or even just crush them with your hands and throw them in. Again, this is a very forgiving recipe. Now we're gonna add 2 cans of beans. I have here a can of dark red kidney beans and a can of black beans. Same thing, last time I made it, I usually use 2 cans of kidney beans. Sometimes I use 1 dark and 1 light, but the last time I made it, I threw in a can of kidney beans and a can of black beans, and it was really, really good. So that's what I decided to do again this time. Just stir that in. Now we're going to add, usually what I use is a can of tomato paste, but I don't have any cans, so I'm going to use the tube tomato paste, which actually is a lot more convenient in a lot of ways, because you can store the leftovers in the fridge and it's very easy to work with. I'm not really sure of what the equivalent amount is, so I'm going to throw about, I would say, 1/3 to 1/2 of the tube in there. And before I stir that in, I'm going to add my seasonings. So I have about a tablespoon of chili powder. I tend to go a little bit heavy on the seasonings because it gives it a good flavor. And again, I like to use Penzi spices. They're really the best around. And the recipe that I follow calls for 1.5 to 2 teaspoons of cumin, but I always put at least a tablespoon in there because I love the smell of cumin and I love the taste of it. You can also add whatever other spices you want. If you want to have a little sweeter taste, you could add a little nutmeg or even a little cinnamon. Some people add a little chocolate to their chili. I've never tried that before. But I keep it fairly simple. I also don't like to start out with really spicy chili. I like it flavorful, but not particularly hot and spicy. But if you want to, you could add a jalapeno pepper, or you could add some hot sauce. But you can also finish it by adding something like hot sauce to the end. That way, whoever's eating it can add the sauce and make it the heat of their personal preference. So we're just going to stir that around. Make sure everything's nice and incorporated. Put the lid on. And I'm going to set this crock pot for high for 5 hours. This is a great crock pot because it's got a warming feature. So if you don't get back to it right at 5, the crock pot will turn to warm and it'll keep it nice and hot. But again, this recipe is very forgiving, so if you do it a little less time or a little more time, it's not going to really matter a whole lot. I like to serve it with cornbread and toppings like shredded cheddar cheese or chopped onion for people who like raw onion. I'm not one of them, but a lot of people like that. Or, you know, again, you could use jalapeno peppers, hot sauce. You can use whatever you want. But this makes a nice, hearty, pretty healthy dinner, especially when it's made with the turkey, which is low fat. And it's great for lunches. It freezes well. It refrigerates well. So it's a great recipe, and it's mostly using ingredients most of us have on hand, except for the meat. I have made it vegetarian style a couple of times. I've made it with the vegetarian crumbles. I think they're soy crumbles that you can get. I've never made it with substituting like a mushroom, like a porcini mushroom or something like that instead of the beef, but I don't see why you couldn't do that. But when I've made it vegetarian style, it's also come out just as delicious. You know, I think the key is really the tomatoes and the seasonings. And so we'll come back in 5 hours and we'll taste it. Okay, welcome back. So the chili has cooked in the crock pot for 5 hours, and then it's been warming for about between a half an hour and an hour, just because we weren't ready to eat before. One thing that's important to remember when using a crock pot is do not remove the lid during the cooking time. That's very important because the heat needs to stay continuous and circulating, and once you take off that lid, you're letting a lot of the heat out. So there shouldn't be any reason to open it. I will admit I did taste it, but that was after the cooking time was over. So now we're going to serve it and see how it is. Looks and smells delicious. Now it is a little bit on the liquidy side. I think I didn't drain the tomatoes super well, but that's really, you know, not a big deal. If you want it thicker, just make sure you drain more of that liquid out. If you like it thinner, it's fine to have a little liquid in. So I don't know, can you get a good view of that? So that's what it looks like. Smells delicious. We have our toppings prepared. Scallions are good on top too, but we didn't have any. So I'm going to put, for mine, I just like a little bit of cheese on it. This is just shredded cheddar cheese. And there's red onions for those who prefer that or enjoy that as well. And on the side, delicious cornbread. Now I will admit we kind of cheat when it comes to the cornbread just because it's much easier. We buy the boxes of Jiffy cornbread mix. You can make corn muffins or cornbread out of them. They're really easy and very, very tasty. So I'd like to thank my DP and sous chef, Greg, for making the cornbread. And let's give this a taste. Now remember, when stuff comes out of the crock pot, it's very hot. Mmm. That's good chili. Enjoy, everybody.